The gallery has always been the heart of art produce, and it's been a different configuration over different years, but it's always been this public space. It's been visible and accessible to the neighborhood and to folks walking by on the sidewalk 24 hours a day. You can just pass by and have an experience of what's going on inside, or you can come in and it's not a gallery with white walls with a docent sitting there making you feel uncomfortable, but you can have your own experience and approach the artwork your own way. To me, being an artist and a teacher overlap in many ways. The work that we do here is providing an environment for not just kids, families, adults, seniors, immigrants, have a chance to come together and explore the environment here and manipulate materials and look around, listen to each other, learn from each other. The most exciting thing for me is when children and families from the neighborhood meet college students from UCSD who are here through a class, and a high school student who's getting community service credit, and one of the seniors in the low-income housing across the street all meet at the same table or in the garden to work on a project together. That to me is the richest kind of learning.
I think schools can learn a lot from spaces like Art Produce because it causes us as teachers to question everything. There are certain ways that we do school, and we just sometimes just assume, well, that's how it is because that's how we always do it. But then you come to a place like Art Produce and you see all these opportunities in different spaces, indoors, outdoors, with all kinds of materials, with all kinds of people. And you realize, okay, wait, maybe there's other ways that we could be doing this. So I think it's really transformative, and it really is an opportunity for all educators to reflect and then question, why are we doing what we're doing, and are there other ways that we could be doing it as well?
The Make It Yourself community art class is kind of an extension of what I had been doing at the North Park Rec Center for about 15 years. Bringing an after-school arts program to the neighborhood. There's still a lot of folks in this neighborhood that can't afford art classes, or we don't have it in our schools. And I feel like it's part of my responsibility as an artist to think about how I can be a cultural resource and how this space can be a resource to the community. We started doing the drop-in classes on Saturdays where folks can interact. There's sometimes a directed activity. Much of what folks do is to explore materials in an environment that is not a typical classroom. It's not necessarily a guided activity, but it gives you a chance to work with someone maybe you've never met, someone who's a very different age and from a very different background, maybe just someone who's passing through, and have this sense of social space and common experience. What is great about watching the kids in the Make It Yourself class is they are completely self-directed. They are often the ones that are teaching the elders. The younger the kid, the more knowledge and the more spontaneity and the more creativity they have. And we're all watching the 7-year-old asking, how did you do that? Tell me about it. And the great thing about art is there is no right or wrong. There is, there's no good or bad. To honor everyone's personal expression and ability to create something and help each other collaborate on something doesn't always happen in traditional school settings. And so the ability to do it in a safe environment and take as much time as you want thinking about your ideas and working them out on paper or in clay or in the garden. And I think what has helped me most is developing the space and developing these activities is to really have the luxury to be responsive and be flexible, be responsive to the community's needs, but also be responsive to the individual's needs and interests, to provide as many opportunities for as many experiences and modalities and interests as possible. That's super exciting for me, and I think it allows for a range of access.
You know, I think that the thing that really hooked me in being really sold on integrating art and using art as a core feature of instruction is the idea of problem solving. Because that's really what art is about, and that's really what thinking and learning is about. And when I started getting involved in some projects with people like Lynn at Art Produce and some other artists, I realized that it really was all about being creative and solving problems, and that's what we want for kids.
You know, one of the things that can happen outside of a traditional classroom is that families can come together and learn from each other in ways that they don't at home and ways that they don't at school. And I think across the generations, the learning is fluid and more horizontal. You know, children have a lot to share with the adults about the world and what's happening in the world and what affects families and what affects their lives in the world. So this kind of third space is a place that can offer that opportunity to happen.
I think that learning happens primarily through social interaction and interaction with the environment. Being in an interesting environment and being with people who are working on an interesting project or problem together is an optimal learning environment. And so that only can happen when the students are actually working with real people in real places. So they've got to get off campus, and that's why Art Produce has been such a great place that we've been able to bring them to and do all kinds of things with them, arts related, but also really focused on relationship building and learning from each other. I think that's another really important goal that we have for our students, is that we want them to feel that they belong to this greater community.
It's clear to me, learning happens everywhere. Learning doesn't, you know, it's not a 9 to 5 thing. It's not, 7:30 to 3, and then when class is over, we stop learning. It continues and has the potential to happen everywhere. Art Produce is a bit of an experiment in how we can provide an environment that allows for discovery and connection and relationships and interaction. You know, it's always been important to me to provide an opportunity to allow folks in the neighborhood to have this experience of art and culture in their own neighborhood as part of the fabric of their neighborhood, walking to the bus stop, walking to school, getting a coffee, going to the drugstore.
I've been involved with bringing some elementary school students here, and the level of engagement was super high, the level of enthusiasm was super high, but also the level of focus and thought and interest and questioning was really high because it's such an interesting environment to be in. Also, when the parents who came on the field trip with the kids were involved in a different way. They were really participating in the activities, they were asking their own questions, they were collaborating with their kids rather than just sort of monitoring or disciplining. So it was just a really good space for that kind of intergenerational learning to happen. My work with college students sort of follows the same exact principles, that you have to get into the world to really learn something. And they also have a lot to learn from the people that they're working with. So that's another big piece, I think, is this idea of collaboration and social justice, that we have a lot to learn and we are part of the community.
Mapping Home was a project that incorporated a lot of people and organizations, and was a really wonderful collaboration between myself, other artists in the community, Students from UCSD PAL program, the Corinne organization of San Diego, and other refugee organizations in San Diego. And the idea was to create a situation that allowed for cultural transmission between communities and within communities. So it was a intergenerational art making, story recording project. We had workshops that were in different parts of the spaces at Art Produce, and different groups came together in the spaces. The gallery was the exhibit space, but it also was a place where people came together to paint the walls, a large map of the world inside. So there were ways to talk about where your people are from and where you've traveled and where you were born, kind of within that space. We created paintings on wood that represented symbols from our home and ideas about what our homes meant, and the kind of the references and the concepts about home and safety and security. One of the really fun days was when the students from UCSD PAL program brought foods from their cultural backgrounds here to share with the folks from the refugee community that were working on the projects, who then had this wonderful opportunity to learn about each other's cultures through the food that we shared. And, you know, one thing we all do, which is eat, and one thing that, you know, a lot of us have memories of from our family background.
Another really great project that we've been able to engage with Lynn around is thinking about the physical environments of some of our local schools. Lynn has been an advisor and a resident artist and a consultant for work that we've done with some of the schools that EDS works with. And we've involved our PAL students, and we've involved the kids at the school in redesigning facades, creating murals, doing all kinds of redesigns, and just sort of transforming schools into more visually welcoming environments that reflect the people who are at the school.
I think it's exciting to consider the idea of the world as a classroom, the neighborhood as a classroom. There's this, you know, new notion that if people are active and learning and their neighborhood becomes vital, then it also affects the economy of a neighborhood. It affects people's, you know, personal well-being. And I think there's a lot that we can all learn about how creative problem solving and, you know, critical thinking happens in spaces that are non-traditional spaces, but are spaces that exist all around us all of the time, everywhere we are.